When I tell my story, I feel like certain people are ready to dismiss it as circumstantial, anecdotal, or no big deal. It doesn't prove anything in the minds of those who have already made up their minds about the world, and that's specifically why I'm telling it. For you. I know you. I grew up surrounded by you, and I also spent a lot of time influenced by your mindset. If you go into this with a dismissive mindset, then that's what your perception of my story will be. So try to open your mind and realize that this is not a unique experience. This is how my life has been personally poisoned after supposedly doing everything right. I grew up in the church, attending a private Christian school with well-off parents. I loved Jesus, loved God, the works. I remember constantly feeling very alone in my childhood. I would spend my time playing alone in my room, my sister yelling at me if I asked to hang out, and my parents dismissing me if I asked to hang out. So instead, I would draw or write stories or play with my Barbies and write in my diary about how lonely I was. It wasn't all bad. It's not like I was always alone, of course, and I was close with my mom. I enjoyed my solitary hobbies, and my parents both loved me a lot. I think they were just tired or preferred a hands-off parenting style. But I internalized this anyway, and growing up, I was convinced that my dad hated me, and that I was not good enough for him. My two older siblings would relentlessly bully me, especially my brother, who was the oldest, but I still love them very much. And I mean humiliating me by feeding me cat food and forcing me to run outside while they ran behind me yelling horrible things. My parents didn't notice, and still I always desperately wanted approval from all of them. So my dad started to quote unquote lose his mind when I was around 9 or 10. I was sat with my siblings down in front of a YouTube video where an old man dressed as Santa put a little girl on his lap and asked her to take a blue pill or a red pill in his hand. One would give her the truth about Christmas and the other would keep her ignorant. She chose the red pill, and he went on for 20 minutes droning about the history of Christmas. And I didn't pay attention at all. But I found out later he was explaining the paganistic practice of the Christmas tree representing the literal cock of the Roman god Saturn as a very vague retelling, which is worshipping an idol that is not God, which is against the Ten Commandments. Suddenly, Christmas, Halloween, Easter, modern science, medicine and doctors, education, etc. are all products and worship of Satan. And that's how it was explained to me, and I was berated for saying otherwise or asking to partake in those activities. I still saw a doctor and dentist yearly, but I never felt like I could be honest with them, as I knew if I told the doctor about my depression, it would not end well for me somehow. I was told my teachers were lying to me about the Earth being round, climate change, space, evolution, among other things. I was barred from certain brands of food for having symbols of the devil on them, like chocolate milk, because of the bunny on the bottle, and I didn't buy it. I was also not given vaccines in junior high. When I was 12, my parents joined a Messianic Jewish church, and they attempted to force my sister and I to join. My brother threatened to remove the two of us from the household if he continued, and so they stopped forcing us to attend the services. However, this did not stop them from attempting to integrate me into the culture. I remember being picked up by them from a late rehearsal where I had been at school at that point for 12 hours. They did not drive me home, however, and instead took me to a family gathering at the house of one of the families who also attended the church, so I was essentially trapped in socializing with their kids. They were homeschooled and indoctrinated into believing in the flat earth theory, but said we could be friends anyway. This whole situation with my parents was what caused me to fully reject religion, and I've always hated it. I had severe jaw problems that I actually still have them. I have severe jaw problems that 3 different orthodontists told me and my mom would grow worse, and was refused a specialist or braces by my dad under the guise that it was too expensive. Then my dad spent around $2,000 to get circumcised. I get to deal with chronic jaw tension, fucked up and missing teeth, and potential degeneration because my dad has always prioritized his devotion over any of his family. I didn't know we were well off because I was constantly told things were so insanely expensive. I listened to my parents talk like they wouldn't have somewhere to live while attending a private school and my mom never needing a job. Now, my mom was in a different spot, as she most certainly did not believe in the flat earth. She was very in tune with her culture and religion that my dad now said was satanic, but growing up in her culture meant whatever the husband says goes. I never thought my mom was like that, as she would always call my dad out for being useless in general, for not being capable of cleaning or cooking. But as it turns out, my dad had plenty of power over her, so she was forced to compromise her beliefs, join a church in which she was severely bullied by the absolute lunatics who attend, and give up many holidays I know she loved deeply. I grew up knowing that the vast majority of stress in my mom's life was because of my dad, not helping with any household work, and finding it funny to make us uncomfortable. My siblings would berate her and call her mean to him. But I recognized that my mom was horrible at times, especially to my sister, blaming her for things like gaining weight, self-harm, and being groomed at 13. So I can't blame my siblings for having more resentment to my mom than I do. And even after everything I've just explained, I still think my parents just tried their best. And maybe I'm giving them too much credit, but even when your family does this to you, you love them. And if you didn't grow up like that, you might not get it. But if you did, you do. You always want your mom and dad. Again, I understand why my siblings were resentful, but they were terrible to me, and others terrible. Wanting their approval, I internalized many of the things they said about my parents, other kids, the world, or me. My brother would manipulate us, gaslight us, or pit us against each other, all for a laugh. My sister would judge everything I did on the basis that I was younger, and his influence did not help. Still, after my parents started going insane, I ended up falling very close with my siblings, as my parents going to church on Saturdays was the one of few times we could all discuss what the hell was going on in detail. My sister and I, in particular, became absolute best friends. And, she was nicer to me when there was nobody around, as she was insecure that her best friend was her little 13-year-old sister. We would sing and listen to musicals, paint, play video games, do makeup, watch TV shows, literally everything. And I was so depressed back then that I wouldn't get out of bed at all. So every Saturday morning, she would come to my room and plop on top of me and wouldn't leave until I got up to make breakfast with her. We spent our entire weekends together, and after school, she'd run up to my room to hang out with me. As I started to hit puberty, it became very clear to me that my worth was dependent on my appearance. I was called ugly and annoying and stupid for a lot of my childhood and felt an immeasurable pressure not to be. I felt like a failure as a woman for being tall or unattractive to boys, awkward, loud, clumsy, and profane. I also didn't have anything in common with the other girls, as I didn't listen to the same music or have the same interests. I was very much a weird kid. The girls all hated me, the boys hated me too. I was insanely insecure and also felt immeasurable guilt after going through puberty, as I was under the impression that women were never and could not be horny. In movies and TV, there were always jokes about women not wanting sex, women giving sex as a reward, sex being male-centric and something they want. I thought it was disgusting of me to even be interested in it. I grew up surrounded by my friends who all had stay-at-home moms who had been to university and dropped out to raise kids. And so I decided that meant going to university was a waste of time, as my only aspiration was to stay at home and raise kids. I didn't care about school, and I couldn't pay attention anyway. Then I started hanging out with the nerdy guys. I found that they couldn't care less about what I looked like. They thought I was fun. We talked about video games. We talked about anime. I felt very happy to be part of a large group of friends. None of them belittled me. None of them were creepy to me. And this was one of my first instances of acceptance. And I felt like I knew who I was. In grade 7 and 8, I would have considered myself a really big feminist, But as I got closer to high school and hung out almost exclusively with Christian white guys, along with the influence of my extremely conservative brother, who I severely wanted the approval of, I started falling down the alt-right pipeline. My first instance of it being when my sister told me she did not think the Me Too movement was beneficial for women. And due to me being young and dumb on the internet, I was really sick of being called transphobic or racist, and I really liked the approval that I got from men for not only rejecting feminism, but starting to actively hate it. Creators like Shoe on Head validated how I felt by cherry-picking BuzzFeed videos of women doing unconventional things and calling it an attack on white people or men. I remember BuzzFeed's man-spreading video went very viral for apparently doing this, where women would manspread the way men do on public transit. Everyone interpreted this as judging the way men sat, and suddenly there was a war on men in my head. I took diversity as an attack on me because I was immature, and in being called out by minorities, I took it personally and let it corrupt my mind. I was really pro-life and highly criticized Black Lives Matter. Not to mention, I was also a huge capitalist, but didn't have any aspirations myself. I just wanted to get married to someone who already had an established career so that I wouldn't have to work. I also desperately wanted kids young. So that's so ironic. I was still friends with some of the nerdy guys I had hung out with before high school, but I could tell that in high school they started seeing me differently. And one of them asked me out, and after I said no, he started ignoring me when we hung out together. Now, call me stupid for this, but I still trusted them. I had been friends with or known this group of guys my entire life. But they started saying odd things that made me think that they only kept me around as a woman, not as a friend anymore. They would ignore me until it was late at night, then talk to me about their thoughts and feelings. They would compliment my appearance. They were touchy, and I was flattered because I had never experienced male attention. I felt immense failure for having little experience being creeped on as well, and I took this male validation as the utmost confident. And I took this male validation as the utmost compliment. I felt like a failure as a woman for not being creeped on. Then one night we were having an overnight get-together. We had all been drinking and we all went to sleep. I woke up that night to a hand on my chest under my shirt, and it was the one guy in my friend group who I thought least of all would do something like this. And his brother was sleeping right next to me, and the room was completely full of our friends. I was horrified and froze, but I was unsure if it was non-consensual, as it must have been my fault for leading him on, or for sleeping over with people who I thought were my brothers. I know plenty of people will love to tell me that I was to blame for this, but it won't change the fact that it was, by definition, sexual assault. The education system and repressive Christian conservative culture had raised this boy to be touch-starved and ignorant of how consent works, as well as self-hating for feeling that way. And he clearly thought I would have no problem with it. I went back to sleep for a bit before texting my mom to come get me and leaving before anyone woke up. I didn't get out of bed the rest of the day. I went to school zombified and could hardly walk. I couldn't look at myself before showering for weeks because I felt so disgusting. And I completely wrote off sex after being insanely horny for years. Even after I had learned to accept that part of myself as normal. My first ever sexual experience was assault. I told my best friend at the time about it, and she told me, "You should have pushed him off. You know better. I feel bad for you both." And I had to console her because she was so upset over what happened to me. I could never tell my parents, as I feared they would blame me for it, as the alt-right tends to do with sexual assault. Only my sister knows, and only she treated me with decency. I was 17. Then I got my first boyfriend. He was also in that group, but he felt like they had grown to be toxic. They were mean and hierarchical. I was very happy about this relationship for a bit, but he started to suggest things to me. I didn't tell him about my assault yet, but he would tell me randomly that he always had protection on him. I would brush this off and change the subject as it made me insanely uncomfortable. He would beg me to sleep over, and I would say no, as my parents were very adamant that this was not allowed. I knew no amount of asking was going to change their minds, and I told them this, but he would beg me to ask anyway and push back more. This got me in trouble on numerous occasions. Then my parents left town, and I have him over in secret. At this point, I was comfortable making out with him and him touching my chest, but I did not want to have sex. I just wasn't ready. Then the first night he's over, we're making out. He pulls down my pants and starts going down on me, as well as shoving his finger inside me. The next night, I get extremely high, and the night after that, I get extremely drunk. I guess I told myself it was just for fun, but I did it to keep him away. After this, I am even less inclined to do anything sexual with him, and we don't even speak about it until much later. I didn't know until 5 years later that this is rape by definition, which is non-consensual penetration of a body part or object. Rape has historically been defined as violent and forceful penetration with a penis, which will lead many to deny that this experience counted. I understand that it's not as brutal and it's not the same experience, but being betrayed by your best friend sexually is horrible. It should not be discounted, and him feeling allowed to do that to me is part of the problem. I hated it, but thought it couldn't have been wrong because we were dating. Over time, however, I allowed him to touch me briefly and within my control. I felt very immense fear at the thought of touching him back, but unable to communicate or tell him about my assault and its impact. I also didn't want to tell him what he had done to me because I didn't realize what it was or why it killed me inside. He grew frustrated. I wouldn't reciprocate, but was nice about it. He would tell me it would be nice to receive. I would brush this off as well and change the subject as it horrified me to consider. One night we make out, he puts my hand on him, and I didn't know what it was at first, and I didn't know what he expected me to do, so I just pulled away and we said nothing about it. Eventually, though, I decided I was ready to reciprocate. The experience was not bad. I felt more or less okay. After this, I decided it was time to tell him that one of our best friends assaulted me. I didn't want to tell him beforehand because I didn't want it to affect the way he saw me. I was also not capable of saying the words, "I was sexually assaulted," out loud. I had to write it down and tell him that way, and he acted devastated. I took this as a good sign, but looking back, I know I didn't see a single tear actually fall. So I don't know why he put on so much drama. After this, I felt comfortable enough being sexual with him, but we were barred from having penetrative sex because I would get so freaked out and freeze up, which caused attempts to be insanely painful. I would withdraw consent, and he told me I was using him, wasn't attracted to him, and that I was selfish. So I learned to stop saying no. I actually found his relationship with his family to be highly enmeshed. He opened up to me that he was frustrated with them, as they were a very arrogant group of people who would continuously discuss the flaws of others and describe how they were superior. His father was a short, insecure, money-hungry little man who clearly cared very much about perception. He told his 4 sons, no daughters, growing up that they were better than everyone else purely because of their lineage. It was odd to his family that my boyfriend would visit me at my house very frequently, and this seemed to cause resentment between them and me. My boyfriend described how he felt more inclined to spend time with me instead of them, and how his parents were starting to view it as me speaking about them poorly and causing the distance. But I actually really liked them on the outside. They were generous, kind, and accepting. His dad would look at me whenever I spoke with active listening and never made me feel stupid. Not to mention my home life was a complete mess, as being pressured to stay over caused a lot of tension between me and my parents. I was freshly 18 and desperately wanted to stay over with him because I was extremely attached to him. I felt deeply uncomfortable and unsafe by myself and did not want to sleep alone. There was also tension growing between me and his family as COVID-19 was now prevalent and everyone had gotten the vaccine but me. I had graduated high school and was so incredibly burnt out from experiencing school, as well as the depression from my closest friends constantly betraying and violating me, that I did not get a job or go to school for over a year after graduating. I would hardly leave my room, much less my house, as it made me indescribably anxious. There was no way I was going to ask my mom for my healthcare card so I could get vaccinated. And there was no way I was going to go to a pharmacy when the thought of booking a single doctor's appointment paralyzed me. And I have a debilitating fear of needles. My boyfriend accused me of being an anti-vaxxer. I explained this to him, why I couldn't, and he decided that I was making excuses and there wasn't a single reason why I wasn't vaccinated yet. Believe me, I know vaccines are good for you, and I really hope no anti-vaxxers will use this as an excuse, because I should have gotten the vaccine earlier, obviously. I ended up getting vaccinated when I had gotten my healthcare card from my mom for an IUD, and that was more acceptable to ask for. My sister's boyfriend soon after said, "Do you want to get your vaccine right now? I'll drive you." And now that I had the means, I said yes. I got both shots, no side effects, no COVID either. I was very excited and relieved. My boyfriend was pissed that after all of that, I had just gotten it easily, and he called me a child. As time went on, I started to notice that his family was actually deeply disrespectful. The mood of the house was dependent on the father's, and the mother was completely at his beck and call. I noticed them writing her off when she spoke or ridiculing her when she would joke, the brothers snapping at her and telling her what to do, her 18-year-old son asking her to cut up an apple for him, all influences of his father. His father, who would eat the food she cooked for dinner and say, "That wasn't very satisfying, let's go out to eat." His father, who threw chairs when he was angry at his young children and told them not to cry. His father, who used physical abuse. The family encouraging the idea that women should not wear makeup, among other sexist ideals. This behavior was a serious red flag, as they started to nitpick everything I did. They would talk about me reheating chicken wrong, washing fruit wrong, saying wrong things, etc. And I would punish myself as I was convinced and told by them that I was manipulating my boyfriend with sex, deliberately corrupting him, speaking negatively about them, using him, and distracting him. And what I think happened was that they could tell how horribly he treated me, and they blamed me for it. He either treated me poorly for a reason, or I brought out a horrible side to him. He would snap, belittle me, stonewall, gaslight, and manipulate me. He would constantly drive wedges between me and my family and friends, speaking horribly about them and nitpicking what they did. He would talk about breaking up one week, and the next week he would obsess over me, do things for me, compliment and generally take care of and love me. He told me I put him in a position of power over me. He told me it was hard not to get mad when I said no. I asked him not to walk in front of me while we were with his friends, and he said he couldn't make me feel special all the time. He told me what he wanted me to wear. He told me I was an object to him. He called me a witch. He called me a witch and told me I was seducing him. He told me I trained him to rape me. Now, I think to others our relationship would have come across very sexual. We ended up dipping deep into BDSM and power games that we were both way too young for. He was addicted to porn and constantly saw me as one of those girls. His Instagram feed was full of half-naked girls. He'd watch porn while we had sex or use me to masturbate while he watched it. He said he saw sex as something he did to me that was inherently disrespectful. His dad was a pastor, so religious conservative repression was deep-rooted in him, especially after finding porn at a young age. It came to a point, though, that the majority of affection I received from him was sexual. The only way I could get his full, undivided attention was when he was having sex with me. I got addicted to it, and he used this against me massively. And so, after a while of starving myself when he was mad, cutting myself from PTSD, tearing my hangnails off every single finger until they were severely bloody, and crying all the time, I decided that I couldn't go to his house anymore. This was something he had threatened me with twice already, once not allowing me over, and once not coming to mine, so I assumed I'd be able to place that boundary too. I was so deeply in love with him that I would never have broken up with him, but I stopped visiting his house to be abused by his family. He said he was more than willing to work around that. This was a total and complete lie, as he would ask me every single week to come back. Mind you, he would get extremely mad if I questioned his boundaries like that. We were in a very unstable place after I stopped going to his house. Closeness with his family was a non-negotiable for him, and we both knew it. Around this point, he goes on a school trip for 2 weeks. He leaves my house early, so I wouldn't be able to see him before he left, and I sobbed and sobbed in my mom's arms. I had very few friends, so I was super lonely at this time. Although we did text, so he could ask me for sexual pictures, which I sent. When he came back, my dad drove me to the airport at night, where I waited for 3 hours for him to walk through the gates. I had to ask him to kiss me before he does, and he practically ignores me until I go. And at this point, we've been together for 2 years. About a week after he came back, he broke up with me the first time. He said he felt like he couldn't prioritize himself when he was with me. I am honestly unfazed. I don't know how. I think I didn't believe him. I say okay, and after I say this, he starts sobbing in my arms. Real tears, this time. Still level-headed, I explained to him that we suck at communication, it's both of our first relationships, and we can do better than this. I said if he was willing to try again, I was. He said yes. I wish so badly that I had let him go, that I had just said okay, that I kicked him out of my house that night, and instead he hugged me tighter than he had ever hugged me before. The whole night. But I knew in my heart that a relationship you break up in is not going to last, so I woke up and cried all day, even at work, and I cried all week. He, on the other hand, turns into the most perfect boyfriend ever. He is patient, he doesn't get mad, he opens up, he prepares my food, he respects my boundaries. Then, after staying with his sister for a few days, he tells me he's too sick to drive all the way to my house, which was the plan. So we have to stay at his. I learned later that the drive time is a 5-minute difference. I ended up seeing his parents again for the first time in a while. His dad confronts me aggressively and tells me he knows what I'm doing and to not give him any shit. I pop into fight or flight, remaining calm and talking him down. I tell him that he has frustrations that have not been aired out and grew to heavy resentment. I tell him I've really tried hard to put in the effort because I love his son and his son's family. His dad cries in front of me and apologizes, concedes that he did not make me feel welcome, and pledges to communicate openly. The next time I'm there, he accuses me of torrenting in his house, repeatedly grilling me and threatening me, saying that I wanted open communication, so I was getting it. I am blindsided twice in a row. My boyfriend comes over one evening while I'm stoned. I ask him to watch something. He asks me to have sex. I say not tonight and instead ask to watch something. He agrees, but when we start watching, I can sense his boredom. Knowing he was about to go, I had sex with him. And I am no stranger to sexual pain, given I was used to saying yes as it was easier. But this was the roughest it had ever been. And I remember screaming into my pillow, debating asking him to stop, but I didn't because I knew if he didn't finish, he would get upset. I don't let him reciprocate. He falls asleep after for about 10 minutes, and after waking up, I ask him again to watch something. And he says it's late and he has to leave. And I don't even react because at this point he's fully allowed to treat me this way. So I think after this I started to get sick of him, finally. I would fuck with him by telling him I didn't want to breastfeed and watch as he'd argue, simply telling him what he would tell me. I don't want to, and that's a good enough reason. I told him I didn't care that my sister lost my hairbrush on her trip because she bought me a new one and it's just a fucking hairbrush. I told him directly that I felt he was playing with my feelings, which he then said he would never do. I said he was, but by accident. One week he tells me that he would have bragged to his ex, who he was, by the way, with when they were 16 for like 3 weeks, and he would talk about her all the time. Talk about bragging to her about me being so much better than her. We broke up for the last time the week after that, where he suddenly had lost hope again and wrote me yet another letter telling me I was a burden to him and used him. After keeping my true thoughts to myself out of fear of scaring him away or hurting his feelings, I call him out on his shit. I tell him he's invalidating, he doesn't appreciate me, belittles me, disrespects me, and controls me. Unfortunately, I can't bring myself to say that he routinely rapes me, but I know he knows, since he told me I made him do that. He does exactly what I knew he would and breaks up with me immediately. So I am finally free of this monster and his demonic patriarchal family. There's so much more to that story, but I could never fit it all in one place. I'm sure he and his family might have negative stories about my behavior, but my response is that I wish I was worse. Of course, after all of this, I completely rejected conservatism due to how it was being used against me, and became insanely radicalized. My boyfriend had grown up with an angry, avoidant pastor for a father and a mother who did everything she was told, and 3 brothers who walked all over her. I was not good enough, so I was told I was manipulating him and abusing him. You figure out for yourself what system set me up to be religiously abused as a child, then abused in my adult relationships. I chose a man who said he appreciated Christian values and economic conservatism. I wanted to be his housewife. I wanted him to tell me what to do. I wanted him to feel entitled to me. I was okay with it. When I started to change my mind and ask for respect, he would fight back, and then he broke up with me. I was 19. I was upset for like a couple days, then I was mostly fine. I hadn't processed anything that happened to me, so I was nothing but a free girl after realizing how sick I was of him. I immediately pop into the dating scene for the first time, and every guy I go out with is miles better than him. Put in 1,000% more effort, and actually seemed interested in me as a human. I accidentally meet my current partner, and judge me for getting into a new relationship so soon after, but I don't care. I love him. I always have. At first, I would compulsively touch him, thinking that I had to or else he would get mad, and he immediately noticed I did this and insisted I didn't have to if I didn't want to. This blew my absolute fucking mind, and now I've gone several long periods of time without having any sex due to my trauma, without repercussions. Being safe and secure helped me differentiate between compulsion and genuinely wanting it. At this point, I had been best friends with my sister for years. She was still a bit of a bully, but we did everything together, especially after growing up in the household that we did. I had been there for her when her previous partner had also tried to create space between the two of us, not allowing me over because we were too loud together. He shut her out, needed a week's notice to go for a neighborhood walk, didn't wash a single dish, and spent all his free time playing games, gaining excessive weight from ordering takeout for every meal because he didn't cook. They broke up because he couldn't handle her poor mental health. Oh my god. Her next partner is a polar opposite, extroverted and erratic. I learned quickly that he was a nutcase and wrote him off at first because I didn't like the way she was changing for him. I thought she put on an act of being a cool girl, down for whatever. They would never ever spend time apart from each other. But I warm up to him. I find he's fun and kind, generous, and emotionally mature. But my gut was right the first time because when we became friends, he started behaving very odd towards me. Mind you, at this point, I'm 20, he's 28. He and I both bonded over being low-key victims of my sister, how she was insecure and would attack you if you called her out, how she was manipulative and didn't accept responsibility. It turned into him choosing to prioritize me over her when I was around. He would just hang out with me. He started saying very, very disrespectful things to her. I found myself feeling a hefty responsibility for his emotions, and he started making sexual comments to me. So I spent a year under the impression that the reason he is the way he is because he can't help it. Or he says things without thinking, and things come out wrong. I would make excuses with him to my other friends, just like I had always done for other men in my life. His friends would make sexual comments to me. I would get high all day, hang out at her place, and listen to them get in the stupidest fights, where I would listen to him insult her and gaslight her. I would wake up every morning with immense disappointment that I had woken up, and at night when they went to bed, I would stand on their balcony, hovering over the edge, thinking about it. I wanted to so badly. One day I figured that if things were simply coming out wrong, I would not be finding my sister with fresh cuts on her arm, crying in her car, and I wouldn't be worried for her life. One day I tell her he is horrible to her and that I can't be around him. She tells me he's not going anywhere, which I accept. A couple weeks later, I convince myself I went crazy. I got scared and overreacted. So I text him and apologize. We agree to meet up again at their place, where they overload me with psychology jargon I don't really understand or pay attention to explain why I did what I did. She shows me old cuts on her wrist. I didn't even realize while I was there, but later, that I had seen the fresh ones on her upper arm, not on her wrist. He starts saying that it was very hard to hear that I thought he was mistreating my sister, and he said he could disregard my initial distrust of him because I would also say a lot about my ex's family. So I was probably just saying things. But now I was his friend, and I still thought he was mistreating her. His eyes were teary, but I didn't think he actually cried. He texted me that night. He said he opened up to me that day, cried in front of me, and I did not respond supportively. He said, "When I share things with you, I'd like you to respond appropriately." So I don't respond to him. And I don't say anything for a while. My sister texts me and asks why I'm still upset. I explain, and she defends him. Then he texts me, he tries apologizing first, and when I don't concede and come back, he texts me paragraphs and paragraphs of excuses, attacks, and guilt-tripping. He said I was calling him names. He said I was the one manipulating her. He said he was scared to set boundaries with me. I am steadfast in my very simple boundary that I would like to have distance between us and ask the two of them not to bring this up again, which they do for an entire year. And every time I see them, they attempt to convince me I'm wrong about what I've heard and seen, and we need to work this out so we can be friends again. I said no. We have worked this out. I don't want to be friends again. Now behave like an adult during family events and be civil. He texts me, "I miss you" at night, and begs me to call and talk to him. My sister asks me if I want to go for a walk because she wants to see me, only to bring up the topic again. She tried to tell me I had psychosis when I told her I suspected OCD, and honestly, setting this boundary with them felt like the last thing I needed to do before I could heal. Initially, I felt very empowered, but then I felt extremely alone. I didn't miss him. I felt relieved to not have to cater to his emotions anymore. But his friends had become my friends, just like how they became hers. My sister has always been my lifeline. I spent so much of my teenage years with her. She takes up all of my happy memories from the age of 12 to 18. I told her every single thing about me. I trusted her enough to create anything I wanted around her, and she always looked out for me. So I have a complete and utter mental breakdown. Cut off my hair, shave my eyebrows, cut myself, stop eating. I spiral into deep derealization and start questioning if I'm real, if my parents are real, if my partner's real. I stop talking in public or at work, and whenever I do, I feel incredibly stupid. I don't have sex because I start getting flashbacks and feel guilty for it. I have intense anxious meltdowns and tell myself horrible things, and I believe them. I would think about killing myself every day, not because I wanted to die, but because I was such a horrible, hopeless person. Eventually, the situation with my sister came to a major climax, but I can't get into details, but it's behind me. Honestly, part of what snapped me out of it was when I got a UTI from stress. I realized I had to find other coping skills because, dude, a UTI fucking hurts. So I ate. I couldn't eat a lot, but I kept myself full. I drank a lot of water and found healthier hobbies. I started writing music, stopped caring about what others thought. I found a new coping mechanism in taking care of myself and controlling aspects of my life that I could, such as nutrition and exercise. I don't eat that clean and I don't work out that much, but I have energy. I dance, I cook, I laugh a lot, and I'm completely unafraid to be myself. It's interesting how happy you can become as a woman when you reject living to appeal and can exist in spaces that build you up. I've made an insane amount of friends in the music scene and the LGBT community. My radical leftist feminist boyfriend is my biggest cheerleader in the world, and we worship each other. I am so authentically myself around him, and he encourages it so much that I can be that way around everybody. And my joy is infectious. Tell me why I should be happier as a conservative. If you ask me, this experience and all the others just goes to show the allowances made for abusive men in society. My track record for trustworthy men is currently very poor, and while it may not prove anything to you, literally all I can say is that I think it does. Let's not forget the 97% statistic. You can deny it, it doesn't make it any less true. It's really hard to get all this down without re-traumatizing myself. There's so much in me that blames myself, but the worst part about it is the denial. The worst part is knowing that even when I say every single detail, someone is going to tell me that I was wrong, that I was immoral, that I was stupid or wanted it or asked for it. But I'm at a point where I don't need that validation. If you think I'm lying, evil, or shameful, that's okay. It doesn't bother me. You at least listen to the whole thing. That's enough for me. You can say it doesn't prove anything about how women are treated in society, but I just think it does. I did everything right, and I've been let down and abused by men my entire life. Some women have good fathers. Some women have good partners. Not every woman has a story like mine, but nearly every woman has a story. 8 out of 10 rapists are known to the victim. Friends, coworkers, teachers, family, intimate partners, boyfriends. They are rarely or functionally never transgender people or drag queens. They are rarely homeless or strangers. And I know conservatives love to blame immigrants for sexual assault, but most often they're men who just don't give a shit. Men who aren't political and are just your average jackass or lazy dude. Or they are men in powerful positions, raised in environments that train you to own women. White, rich, conservative. Okay, not every white rich conservative is a rapist. Don't be dramatic. Prove me wrong and let your actions speak. Be a good man. I recognize them. I don't just call every man a creep or think every man is creepy. Most of my friends are still men. I love my conservative brother and my conservative parents. I think men are quite disadvantaged by the patriarchy. People who blame, belittle, or call men liars for being sexually abused are pathetic, but I find it's mostly conservative men, or TERFs. Same with people who judge men for having few to no emotions and expect them to provide. And as a white woman who has been through all of this, I can say so confidently that I have never been ostracized, attacked, or mocked for my race. I've never been belittled by a feminist in real life. If you are on the alt-right pipeline, I would implore you to consider if you have had any experiences being victimized in your real day-to-day life. I'm sure many of you have online experiences fighting with all sorts of crazy people, or even one or two in real life stories. But I am regularly sexually harassed in my workplace, sexually harassed in public by family, nearly human trafficked in my downtown area, not to mention spoken down to constantly in my daily life by every man I have ever met. I'm sure, of course, that not every man is like this, but oh my god, shut the fuck up. This is the female experience, but I have never felt unsafe for being white. Oh my god. So please, listen to all of that. And if you still want to blame me or tell me there's no patriarchy or God forbid that there's a war on men, then by all means, go right ahead. You are beyond saving.